Okay, I have here on my notes that I'm supposed to tell you that this is a very, very powerful SIP packet and manipulation and injection suite rather than an incomplete set of things that I haven't put a nice wrapper around. Okay? So view this more as a power interface than a lack of user interface. So our target is going to be proxy01 .sipphone.com, and we'll send it to okay. Obviously, the DNS is not working. The DNS is not working very badly. All right. So, man walks into a bar. Ouch. DHCP? Right. Ooh, the suspense is killing me. Okay, well, we could possibly go back to the slides and then come back to see if DHCP actually exists in the network. Or we could all sit here and look at DHCP. All right, so that was our example of how easy SIP spoofing is to do. Obviously, a lot more difficult than it looks. Okay. MGCP attacks, which will be our next not running example. I love this portion of the MGCP. Like there's a portion of the, it's not the RFC, but it's a version of the RFC that everyone uses for implementations. It's a PDF by NCS. Basically, it has a section called On Security Considerations, and it consists of this two-line fragment. Security is not provided as an integral part of MGCP. Instead, MGCP assumes the existence of a lower layer providing actual security. Okay, what this means in practice is there's no security at all on MGCP. What it means in theory is everyone is supposed to deploy IPsec, get a full PKI environment, and then deploy MGCP devices on top of that. And as you can imagine, I think that's happened exactly once since MGCP has been rolled out. Things that we can do against MGCP. MGCP is a very, very ugly protocol. Essentially, the way that it works is it has a verb, which are these garbled-looking four-letter combinations. It then has a caller ID number, which is not actually a caller ID as in a phone call ID. It's simply a reference to this particular conversation that you're having with the MGCP. Things that you can do with MGCP. Well, because all of the security is provided by a lower layer rather than the MGCP protocol, you can do things like you can modify connections. So you can send MDCX and say to the MGCP server, from now on, this particular RTP stream that you have is now also going to be going to this address and port. So much like we can inject SDP into a SIP stream, we can also directly inject SDP into the media gateways. So we can do monitoring directly from these boxes, which is pretty cool. We can also create new connections. So we can say, open up a line on the trunk and attach it to this number. That obviously means free anonymous phone calling. We can also delete connections where once again we can drop people who have hooked up to, basically have hooked up to existing phone calls. We can come in and say, terminate this phone call, it's no longer in session. Why we would want to do that, I'm not really sure. Okay, let's see if we've got any luck. Do we have DHCP working? Oh, cool. All right. So, as I was saying about SIP being pretty straightforward to spoof, So we get the message back from the box that we sent it to earlier. If we print it out, we say, oh no, apparently we sent it with a max forwards of only 1, so our request is timed out. And they've sent back to us the port internally that it used and the IP address that it used. It's filled in the rest of the VIA for us. So we know what the back-end port is because it tells us that it's behind a NAT, right? So we actually get to find out what the port is that it used on the internal interface of the NAT address, right, which was 5516. Yay. It also fills in some other stuff for us, like we sent it a 2 that makes absolutely no sense. As it happens, SIP phone doesn't do any peering with Google, who I believe don't do any SIP at all. So even though it shouldn't have actually looked at this, it should have discarded it by going, whoa, I'm supposed to check this. It's instead responded and given us some information. So we could, for instance, flood them and find out, that's cool. We know it's behind a NAT device. Or we know that's providing a NAT functionality as well. And we can now do fingerprinting of their environment simply by sending anonymous UDP packets. You can clap now. It's pretty cool. Sorry. All right. Come on. MGCP ping. God damn it. There we go. That's proper. So MGCP ping sends out a bunch of MGCP packets to various different servers. I'm keeping the IP addresses private, but you might be able to guess where you want to scan if you're looking for them. As you can see, there are a number of boxes that tell us that we've sent a packet that it doesn't understand. That's okay, we can brute force for a little while and it will understand what we're talking about. When we send the packet, as I was mentioning with MGCP, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to send a verb, an ID number, and then the name of the gateway that we're trying to talk to. If the name of the gateway is wrong, the gateway is not supposed to respond. Oh, cool. Ooh. Right. As we can see over here, Singapore has very politely informed us that we had the wrong gateway name, and it's given us the correct one for the next time that we talk to it. It's also told us that it has access to 4 trunks. AALN is analog access line, so it's analog access line 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I believe that this is an IP directly next to it. As I recall, this is in a university. So the university admins were very nice. These other ones, like the 400 fail, we can deal with, and the 500s are just server errors where it's gone, you've got the wrong name. Fortunately, the way that the name is supposed to be made up is based on the DNS name. So all we have to do is reverse look up the IP addresses that we have, and we can guess what the name is and probably get it right within a few goes. All right. You know what? That's it for demos. I'm not going to show you how to do anything super cool because I haven't implemented it yet, or it's really, really hacky the way that it works, so it's not impressive. But we can talk about how we can steal money instead. So caller ID spoofing. Caller ID spoofing allows us to do a lot of cool things. It used to be quite difficult to do because you didn't have access to voice over IP. Now, fortunately, with voice over IP, you can basically do whatever you want with caller ID spoofing. It now becomes more of an issue of whether you get full ANI spoofing or not. The way that caller ID works, and someone's probably going to have to correct me because I'm not 100% sure on this, is there's basically a section called CNAM and another portion of the caller ID. And if the CNAM is changed, which is fairly easy to do, it's the caller ID name, the other portion of the caller ID still exists, which is the actual real phone number, which is used for billing purposes. With spoofing that we can do from one voice over IP service provider called newphone.net, what happens is they send out the CNAM portion to whatever we want, and they leave the other portion blank because they don't have it. We can then use a calling card provided by a voice over IP calling card provider from Massachusetts who have misconfigured server. All right. You know what? That's it for demos. I'm not going to show you how to do anything super cool because I haven't implemented it yet, or it's really, really hacky the way that it works, so it's not impressive. But we can talk about how we can steal money instead. So caller ID spoofing. Caller ID spoofing allows us to do a lot of cool things. It used to be quite difficult to do because you didn't have access to voice over IP. Now, fortunately, with voice over IP, you can basically do whatever you want with caller ID spoofing. It now becomes more of an issue of whether you get full ANI spoofing or not. The way that caller ID works, and someone's probably going to have to correct me because I'm not 100% sure on this, is there's basically a section called CNAM and another portion of the caller ID. And if the CNAM is changed, which is fairly easy to do, it's the caller ID name, the other portion of the caller ID still exists, which is the actual real phone number, which is used for billing purposes. With spoofing that we can do from one voice over IP service provider called newphone.net, what happens is they send out the CNAM portion to whatever we want, and they leave the other portion blank because they don't have it. We can then use a calling card provided by a voice over IP calling card provider from Massachusetts who have misconfigured servers. What happens is when they get a CNAM that comes in that doesn't have an ANI, they copy the CNAM to the ANI and then route it forward. So we can use a combination of two separate voice over IP providers to gain complete control and access to ANI, which means that we can do things like we can bill phone calls to people we don't like. We can also do voicemail and credit card authorization hacks if we can come up with this stuff. If we can do voicemail hacks, we can break into people's voicemails. We can record yes, 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 yes. We can call 1-800-REVERSE and say, I would like to connect to this, and then it says, do you accept their charges? Answer the phone, yes, 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 yes. Bing, we're in, and we can start forwarding calls and make lots of money. This used to be quite popular with voicemail having no password set to it. Now the voicemails that we can break into via like caller ID authentication, such as all mobile voicemails, are wide open as well. As I said, we can misbill and we can do the pay by phone stuff. As I mentioned in Florida, they've got a pay your gas bill by telephone, and you can register which telephone number you want to have which gas bill number billed to over the internet. And the way that they have their thing set up, it's like basically trivial to register for anyone because you don't even need to phone up. You use email to verify that you've registered the correct telephone number with the correct gas bill number. Okay, newphone.net is really, really cool. They charge you 2 cents a minute. They're assholes to deal with, but they're actually a very, very cool service provider. They basically just have an asterisk box, and it's hooked up to the PSTN. And they say, if you want access, you pay us 2 cents a minute, and you can plug your asterisk box in as well. And part of your configuration, they send you an email and says, for your configuration, when you have a set caller ID, please insert a valid 10-digit caller ID, right? There's absolutely no verification. It's up to you to make sure that you use the right one, which is very nice of them. We can use that combined with other voice over IP mistakes or misconfigurations, and we can get full ANI spoofing. As I said before, the empty ANI portions are filled in very helpfully by a particular rnkprepaid.com, a particular voice over IP provider in Massachusetts. So, let's see. That's the conclusion. All right. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we can attack with voice over IP. We can attack the end users. We could attack the people who are being billed or trying to make money, the service providers, and we can actually abuse the service providers to attack other portions of the security infrastructure. For instance, we can do impersonations of phone calls and get through to help desks with internal phone numbers and so on, where we can then do much, much easier social engineering attacks. So voice over IP is a great enabler of further security attacks. It also provides anonymous phone calling access. So if you and your mates want to talk to each other while you're breaking into whoever it is that you're breaking into, you can use voice over IP to do it. Unfortunately, you can't do it securely. Voice over IP attacks enable additional criminal activities. Okay, we're almost there. And then I'm going to tell amusing stories about how we broke into a telco. So the problem is that there's no really good security solutions out there. There's no really good best practices. It's all immature. It's been around for too brief a period of time, and there haven't been enough people out there actually looking at it as a practical set of attacks. What you tend to find is two types of people out there. The guys out there who say Cisco voice over IP phones are terrible, which I admit I was one of them, but I did it in 2003 when it wasn't cool. And there are the guys out there who say, in theory, if there is a less than 150 millisecond round-trip time period for an RTP packet, the blah, 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 and it's boring academic shit. No one cares. No one tells you how to do cool stuff like make freaking phone calls, unlike me. Woohoo! The big problem with voice